Hello, this is Mr. Lili Bubba, and welcome back to Pokemon Competitive Bios. Now, before I get started, I do have something to say. I would like to apologize for not uploading the past few weeks when it comes to something that I said I would upload weekly. Unfortunately, I'm also going to have to make an announcement that these videos will not be uploaded weekly anymore. They're going to be uploaded a bit less frequently, like maybe one every 2 weeks, but I'm going to try to put more effort into them, and also to the channel in general. I'm going to be uploading more stuff other than just the bios and the walkthroughs, so it's going to be sort of a trade-off, and I hope you guys will enjoy the other aspects of my channel while still being informed by these videos. Now, getting into the video, the Pokemon I've chosen to feature in this video is Gastrodon. Gastrodon is a water and ground type introduced in the 4th generation, and it is currently in the OU tier. Now, something to note about Gastrodon, it has 2 forms, the West Sea form and the East Sea form. The only differences is that one of them is pink and brown, and the other one is green and blue. There are no differences in stats or move pools whatsoever. The appearance is the only thing that is different at all. And the first thing that I'm going to look at is Gastrodon's stats. I will then move on to its move pool, its abilities, its typing, its counters, and then I'm going to give it an overall grade after giving all of the other aspects of it a grade. But yes, at the end of the video I'm going to give it an overall grade, and then I'm going to suggest a moveset as well as an item, a nature, and some EVs to put into it for a set that you could run on a Gastrodon in OU to possibly be successful, as an example of something that you could use on it. So, starting off with Gastrodon's stats, Gastrodon has a very good HP stat of 111. Its attack stat is 83, which is not great, but it's definitely passable. Its defense stat is one of its weak points at 68. Its special attack is 92, which is pretty good. Its special defense is 82, which is also passable. And its speed stat is its big low point at 39, but hey, it's a sea slug, so I guess it's not too out of the ordinary for it to be a bit slower. The grade that I chose to give Gastrodon when it comes to its stats is an A-. It's got a great HP stat. It's also got good special defense and special attack, even a passable attack stat, so it's got mixed abilities when it comes to attacking. The big problem is it has a subpar defense stat, and its base total is rather low at only 475. That may be good compared to other Pokemon, but compared to OU, 475 is not the best base stat total you could have. Of course, that doesn't matter much if you can get the job done without a higher base stat total, but it is something to note that it is rather low. So again, it has good stats, but they're not absolutely stellar. That's why I chose to give it an A-. Moving on to Gastrodon's move pool. I chose to give Gastrodon an A- when it comes to its move pool. It's got great stab from both Earth Power and Scald, and it can cover weaknesses with things like Ice Beam and Blizzard, seeing as the only weakness it actually has is to Grass because of the fact that it was blessed with a Water Ground typing, which is a very good typing, but we'll get to that later. And stuff like Mirror Coat and Counter are both kind of moves that are not so ordinary, but they're just something to note because of its good defense stats. Having moves like that, which you typically wouldn't see on a Gastrodon, but having them can be helpful, so it is good that it's able to learn those things, being as defensive as it is. So that is why I chose to give the move pool of Gastrodon an A-. Now, when it comes to abilities, Gastrodon has 3. These 3 abilities are Sticky Hold, Storm Drain, and Sand Force. Now, an overall grade, and that is taking all 3 of these into account and sort of averaging their usefulness, I gave Gastrodon a B. Now, the reason I gave it a B is because Storm Drain is a good ability. It does have... Well, it actually does not have a resistance. I apologize. It does not have a resistance to Water type. But it isn't weak, despite the fact that it is half Ground type. It is half Water type, so that negates its weakness to water that you would typically see on Ground types. So Storm Drain can be very helpful because it gives it an extra immunity, And it also raises its special attack, which you would typically see Gastrodon being a special attacker with a special attack stat of 92. It raises that stat every time it's hit by a water type move. Sticky Hold is probably the weak point, the biggest weak point of its abilities. It makes it so that it cannot lose its held item. That can be good against trick sets, but they're a bit uncommon, and it's just, it's not as useful as other abilities. Yes, if you did happen to stop a trick set from happening, that's good, but in all other situations, Sticky Hold has no usefulness whatsoever. It's really limited, I guess you could say, as an ability. Now, Sand Force, its last ability, it can be good, but it depends on other people's setting up. You can't really waste time trying to get up a Sandstorm with Gastrodon, so you usually have to be switched into Sand in order for Sand Force to be any good. So that's why it's a good ability, don't get me wrong, but it's not something that is very easy to use because you really depend on others. And when it comes to just the usefulness of just Gastrodon by itself, being able to go in there and get the job done, Sand Force is not the best that you could have. So taking all of those into account, that's why I chose to give Gastrodon a B. Not a bad grade, but not a great grade, I guess you could say. So onto Gastrodon's typing. As I said at the beginning of the video, it is a water and ground type. And there aren't that many of those, actually. There are only, I believe, 5 of those in existence. Those being Wooper, Quagsire, Gastrodon, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad. So it's definitely not a completely unique typing, but a pretty unique typing. Its big weakness, of course, is Grass type, because it is 4 times affected by grass type moves. The good thing is there are only 4 grass types in all of OU, so the tier is not exactly abundant with grass types, and that really helps Gastrodon's typing grade. And if you give it Storm Drain, it gains an extra immunity. It has an immunity to electric being half ground type, which is good because it also covers the water type weakness, and it also has an immunity to water. So that even helps it out even more, and that's why I chose to give Gastrodon an A- when it comes to its typings. Probably the biggest downfall for Gastrodon, as I've said with a lot of other Pokemon, is its counters. There are a lot of things that can take down Gastrodon. I chose to give Gastrodon a B-. And that's because any grass type move, I mean, it will ruin it. Yes, there are only 4 grass types, but grass type moves is a different thing. I mean, any grass type move could really destroy Gastrodon. It's 4 times weak. Its physical defense is not the best, so things like Power Whip could really destroy Gastrodon. Vaporeon and other defensive water types can also wall Gastrodon very easily. You can outwall it. Of course, another example of that being Politoed. And things like Dragonite, something that they have decent defense stats, but they're also used as sweepers, could really destroy Gastrodon, because Gastrodon can't really, unless you run something like Ice Beam or Blizzard, you probably won't be able to take out Dragonite. But even if Dragonite switches in with a substitute, or it has a substitute up and you try to switch a Gastrodon in, Dragonite can completely destroy Gastrodon because of the fact that it would be able to Dragon Dance while you break the sub, and then very easily destroy Gastrodon with a +1 attack and speed to possibly sweep the rest of your team, so that's something you definitely have to look out for. There are plenty of counters, but they're not completely abundant, and that's the only thing that really saved the grade for Gastrodon. It is given a B- by me in its counters. Now that I've taken all of those into account, I'm going to give Gastrodon an overall grade. Just mixing all of those into one, and I'm going to give it an A-. That's, as you can see, that was kind of the average score. I think we had about 3 scores that were A-, and that's the overall grade I chose to give it. And that's because it's got good stats. It's got a somewhat limited move pool, but it's not completely limited. It's able to cover the one weakness that it has, and that's very important. It also has decent abilities, not great, but decent. Sort of an average typing, but the fact that it has 2 immunities and it's such a unique typing definitely adds to the luster of the water ground type. So that is definitely going to give it a bit of a boost. That's why it was given an A minus, and not below that, not above that though because of its 4x weakness, but still a pretty good typing. The counters was its biggest downfall, of course, I've already said that. Given an A minus, and they're just plentiful. They're not very, I guess you could say, potent. Like, they're not, the counters that it has aren't completely hindering it unless it's a grass type. That almost completely ruins Gastrodon, but most of its counters are not completely hindering, and that's why it wasn't given a terrible grade. But they're not exactly good, and that's what kind of held Gastrodon back from getting a better grade. But it's still a definitely a usable Pokemon. Definitely a usable Pokemon. There's a reason it's OU. This thing can be a huge threat to walling. It can also do great damage if it's given enough Storm Drain boosts to its special attack. And it's just a hard Pokemon to get rid of if you don't have the right counter to it. So that's why Gastrodon was given a definitely respectable grade of an A minus. And now that I've taken a look at Gastrodon and sort of rated it, I am going to do the last part of this video, and that is Mr. Lila Bubba Suggests. And this is the part of the episode where I suggest a moveset that you could run on Gastrodon, well, the Pokemon featured in the video, which of course this week is Gastrodon, and also suggest the other parts of the set. And give you just a complete set, maybe an example, an inspiration for something that you could try that's a bit out of the ordinary. I try to put my own twist on sets that are typically used, if not completely overhauling them altogether. So, Gastrodon, I'm going to start with the moves that I suggest on it. I suggest Substitute, Curse, Ice Beam, and Earthquake. Now, the reason for this is you can use Substitute to sort of get behind a wall, and unless your opponent is using something that could easily counter Gastrodon, it's going to be hard for them to break that sub in 1 or even 2 hits. And then Curse, I know this is a bit unorthodox because you don't typically see a physically based Gastrodon, but we'll get to that in a second. Just trust me, upping that attack and defense are going to be very helpful. Ice Beam, even though it's not a physical attack, it's going to be very important to covering the grass type weakness, and just as well, the only other attacking move on this set is Earthquake, so it's going to be important to have Ice Beam to take care of the flying types that would be immune to that Earthquake. And nothing was taken out of special attack, so it's still going to have a passable special attack stat, so that's why Ice Beam is going to do a decent amount of damage. Of course, it's not something that you're going to try to sweep with, but it is something that is usable, and of course, there's also the possibility of freezing, but Hacks isn't something we're really going to get into. Earthquake is the final move I chose to put on this set, because of course with the Curse boosts, as well as the same type attack bonus, Earthquake can just be monstrous if you're given enough boost to it, so that's something you can definitely do a massive amount of damage to, while still being behind a sub and still having plenty of defenses, so that can make Gastrodon a big threat. And speaking of the plenty of defenses, moving on to the EVs I suggest putting 200 into defense and special defense. That's going to make it an easy Pokemon, or not an easy Pokemon, my apologies, a difficult Pokemon to damage, as well as 52 into HP, so it's just going to be a hard Pokemon to knock out. It's going to have a lot of bulk, so unless you run into a big counter or a very powerful grass type move, it's going to be very, very hard to get massive damage done to Gastrodon, as well as 52 into attack just to sort of help out with the cursing and the Earthquake damage. That's going to be the main focal point of this set, is going to be Earthquake, and that's why it's crucial to keep either Ice Beam or Blizzard. That's another thing I can say. You can substitute Ice Beam out for Blizzard, it doesn't really matter, but if you want the accuracy, you can go with Ice Beam, and if you want the raw power, you can go with Blizzard. And the nature I chose is Relaxed, and what that's going to do is it's going to lower its speed, which it doesn't really need much of because it's already very slow anyway. It's not going to be outspeeding anything, and raising its defense, which is just going to help in this being more of a physical set. And I think if you pull it off correctly, it's going to catch your opponent a bit off guard, because you don't typically see physically based Gastrodons. It's kind of rare. I'm not going to say I've never seen a physically based Gastrodon, but it's definitely not as popular as a specially based Gastrodon, because that's what Gastrodon is really meant to be with its special stats. The item, of course, because I'm leaving off recover, it is important, very, very important to have leftovers on this thing. You've got to get some HP back in between turns, because that's the only way you're going to really wall. Because you can take as many hits as you want, but you're going to get steadily worn down unless you have a little bit of HP back each turn. And the ability, which is in my opinion really the only one you should run on this one, is Storm Drain. You can run Sand Force, but it's definitely a risk, and it's not something that's going to be as good at all. So I would choose definitely to go with Storm Drain. And that is the set that I suggest to you to try to run, and maybe come back and tell me how it worked out. If you decide to use this on a team, tell me what happened. Tell me flaws about it. Tell me, you know, what you think of the set. And that's actually going to conclude this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Please leave some feedback, whether that be a like or a dislike, if you enjoyed this video or didn't enjoy it, or found it helpful or didn't find it helpful. And also subscribe to my channel if you found this helpful, because that's going to help my channel become noticed more, help other people find my channel so that they can be helped by these videos and also be entertained by my other videos. And speaking of which, check out my other videos. You know, and if you like them, you know, drop by, leave some comments, leave some feedback on those. Thank you for watching once again, and please come back for the next installment of Pokemon Competitive Bios.